Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Wednesday Wake Up webinar. I love a bit of alliteration. I'm going to talk about positivity today and how now that millions of us are working from home, and even the prospect of having a vaccine means that not many, even that promise of a vaccine might not alleviate the fact that we're working from home, we're in different situations, and all those recent surveys that have been done saying that stress, anxiety, depression are all on the rise. Well, that's probably going to continue, unfortunately. But what can we do to remain positive? Well, as the three of us, we're going to talk about that today in various different ways. We're going to start off with Helen, I think, who's going to talk about gratitude.
Hiya. Good afternoon, everyone. And yes, David is right. I am going to talk a little bit about gratitude. Just a tip for you. I'm going to read you a story too. So a tip for you is that at the end of the day, when you're lying in bed and just as you're settling down and getting ready to drift off to sleep, I want you to think about 3 good things that have happened that day. And it might be something as tiny as I had enough milk for my final cup of tea. It might be something as fantastic as I've just got a job, I've just got a new contract. It could be anything, it doesn't matter. But I want you to think about 3 good things at the end of the day while you're falling asleep, because that will affect how you feel when you wake up and you are starting to retrain your brain. You will start to feel more positive when you wake up if you fall asleep thinking positive. And that again affects how we feel generally in a good start to the day. But I'm going to read you a story now which explains, which kind of highlights the positive mental attitude. The way you think will affect your outcomes and how you feel. This is a story about Socrates, the old Greek philosopher. So it was mid-morning and Socrates had gone for a walk outside the city walls of Athens. He was taking a rest, sitting on a milepost on the road and about 5 miles from the city. Down by his right foot was a small parcel, and he was considering whether to open it now or leave it till later. It was his lunch, and it had been packed carefully and lovingly by his wife, because in those days that's what wives used to do, make lunch for their husbands. His mind started to wander. He knew exactly what was inside his parcel. It was his favourite food, a lovely Greek salad. He began to imagine the contents in his mind's eye. First, there'd be chunks of those luscious, juicy, bright red Mediterranean tomatoes. He imagined how he'd bite into them, taking care not to let the juices explode all over his shirt. Now, if you can manage that with a tomato, you're a good one. Then he thought about the salty taste of the olives. He could feel them already rolling around in his mouth, round and smooth, and then he'd spit out the stone at the passing mosquitoes. That sounds a bit gross, doesn't it? He anticipated the sharp tang of those pungent red onion slices and the cooling, refreshing softness of the cucumber. Above all, he relished the thought of the creamy texture of the slices of sheep's cheese, salty and crumbling in his mouth, and all washed down with that very best extra virgin, cold-pressed olive oil of Attica. It was enough to make your mouth water just thinking about that. He was tempted to have an early lunch, but just as he bent down to open the parcel, a traveller came along and hailed him. "Greetings, friend. Can you tell me, is this the right road for Athens?" Socrates assured him it was. "Carry straight on ahead. It's quite a big city and you can't miss it." "Tell me," said the traveller, "what are the people of Athens like?" "Well," said Socrates, "tell me where you come from and what the people there are like, and I'll tell you about the people of Athens. I'm from Argos, not the catalogue, and I'm proud and happy to tell you that the people of Argos are the friendliest and happiest, most generous people you could ever wish to meet." "And I'm very happy to tell you," said Socrates, "that the people of Athens are exactly the same." The traveller went on his way and Socrates remained on his milestone. The conversation had made him feel like celebrating the goodness and humanity in the world. So his mind went to his wineskin, which was resting by his foot. He wondered whether he should take a drink so early in the day, but thought of the cool, refreshing local wine, its heady mix of grape and pine kernels. Very tempting. He was imagining holding the wineskin at arm's length and squeezing the long, refreshing arc of liquid right into his throat. When another traveller came along the road. Greetings, friend. Can you tell me, is this the right road for Athens? As with the previous traveller, Socrates assured him that it was. Carry straight on, it's a very big city, you can't miss it. Tell me, said the traveller, what are the people of Athens like? Well, said Socrates, tell me where you come from and what the people are like there, and I'll tell you what the people of Athens are like. I'm from Argos, the same place, said the traveller, and I'm sad to disappointed to tell you that the people of Argos are the meanest, most miserable, least friendly people you could ever wish to meet. And I'm very disappointed to tell you, my friend, said Socrates, that the people of Athens are exactly the same. Because what we expect is what we get. The way we think, the way we feel is affected by how we think, how we spot. So if we are looking for the positives, we will see the positive things and we'll think and feel much more positive about everything. And therefore, we'll feel much better in ourselves. If we look for the negative stuff and we think negatively, then we are only going to be finding those negative things more often than not. So Socrates' point was, whatever it is that you think you're going to get or what you expect to get is what you're going to get. So I am now going to send you over to over to Nick, who is going to talk about visualization and maybe a bit of patience too. Hang on. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Helen. I'd like to start off by telling you a story as well. Just it's actually about me, but I want to use it as a basis to explore a couple of concepts with you. So just over 20 years ago, I took the exam for my first black belt in Shotokan karate, and I didn't get it. It's quite an intensive exam. It's about an hour. There's lots of stuff to do. I prepared for months beforehand in terms of practicing fitness, nutrition, everything I could think of, and I didn't get it. And I went back 6 months later and I got it. About 2.5 years later, I'm now going for my second black belt, my second dan, and I went for the exam and I didn't get it. I made 3 mistakes, not mistakes I'd made previously, but they're 3 new mistakes. I trained hard again, I did all my preparation, and then about 6 months later I went for it and I got it. So as you look at me, you can say, well, crikey, I've never met a guy who's failed 2 black belt grading exams before, and that's me. Hello. So as I sit here talking to you now, I'm a 5th dan black belt in Shotokan karate. I've taught people who've won some competitions. I taught people to black belt and beyond, to 2nd dan, 3rd dan. Actually, one of my first students in about 3 weeks' time is actually going for his 4th dan. He's done his training more recently with someone else because he's moved away. So if you were to say from those first 2 exams I took, the first one for my 1st dan and then the first one for my 2nd dan, that, oh, this guy's a failure. You know, it's like I mean, have you ever met in your life someone who's failed 2 black belt exams in a martial art? Well, I have. So I don't consider myself a failure. I'm definitely not the best 5th dan on the planet. Far from it. But I don't feel like a failure. So what is failure? You know, why do some people say, oh, I failed at this? Or why do we have fears around failure? What actually is this thing called failure? So I want to use that story to firstly talk about failure, because the phrase that does it for me on this, which might be very helpful to you, is you only fail if you give up. Now, if you have that phrase, you only fail if you give up, you can also spin that phrase around to come up with something that is equally true, which is, if you never give up, you'll never fail. So with my karate, that is probably one of the things I've been the most successful at over 30 odd years. I've just never given up. I just enjoy teaching, I enjoy training, I enjoy practicing, I enjoy thinking about it, reading my notes, making a diary and all that sort of stuff. So if there's something that you think in the past that you failed at, maybe you're being a bit harsher on yourself. Maybe you actually did get what you wanted at the end. Maybe you realized your goal, you achieved your ambition, or maybe it just changed and you went off and something else came in, and that's fine as well. So be a bit more perhaps mindful about this whole concept of failure, because remember, if you never give up, you'll never fail. And the other thing that story illustrates is that you've probably deduced that when I went for my third dan, I got it the first time, as with my other black belts as well. And when I was going for my third dan, I really had got a bit fed up of not getting it. I'm avoiding the F word there, not getting it at the first attempt. So I did two things differently. I did all the preparation, you know, the intense training, the physical training, the nutrition and everything else. I did all that, but that hadn't been enough the first two times. So I did two things differently. And probably of those two, the biggest single thing was I visualized. I visualized that when I was doing my advanced kata, the prearranged sequence of moves, which is very technical, you make one slight mistake in that, you fail. You know, the foot is there and it should be there, that's a fail. So that's quite intense. And you've got very senior black belts from around the hall looking at you. So I visualized that I was being called on to do it from the right side of the hall. I visualized being called on to do it from the left side of the hall. And I visualized performing that kata completely correctly. So one of the things that happens as well that's quite powerful, the brain can only actually focus on one thing at a time. The whole thing about all this multitasking and everything is actually a bit of a myth. You only focus on one thing at a time. That's why when you say, can you, don't think about a blue elephant. So as soon as we've got blue elephant in your mind, you can only think about a blue elephant. You can't think about a pink flamingo or a yellow crocodile. So when you're visualizing, quick tip here, only visualize things you want to happen. All right, don't visualize something bad happening or something good not happening. Only visualize the positive stuff. But when you visualize, you're focusing on the things that you want to happen. So you're not focusing on anything negative. And the positive way of saying that, because we're talking about being positive here, is that you're only focusing on the positive. And you're also educating your mind, your whole body. There's various schools of thought. This could be like something religious. It could be a universal life force. It can be your cellular biology. But you are educating the world, life, that actually this is what you're going to go for. So there's my two things from today. So first of all, there is no failure. Just never, ever, ever, ever give up. And you will never, ever, ever fail. And secondly, spend some time. You can do it immediately at the end of this webinar. You can just do it for 20 seconds. You don't have to go into some sort of Zen like, you can just think, what is it I want? You can just sit there and you can just visualize it. You can think, one other thing on this is, it's quite important as well to think about how you feel, because your feelings really connect with what's going on around you. So if you actually think, yeah, okay, I've got this, right, okay. And how does that make me feel? You know, am I just happy? Am I deeply content? Am I really ecstatic on behalf of others? How does it make you feel? So they are. So never give up and never fail, and visualize positivity. So with that, I'm going to finish, and I'm going to hand over to David, who is going to elucidate, is that the word? Infuse us all with the power of endorphins. So David, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Okay. Before I get on to endorphins and wonderful little things they are, I want you two to stand up. Come on, Nick and Helen, stand up. And if you're watching this on the webinar recording, stand up. Stand up. What I want you to do, really simple, is nothing too strenuous. Just go up on your toes, take your heels off the ground, up on your toes, hold it for a little bit. Maybe up and down. So just going up and down, nice and steady. Let's try 5 of those. Really simple. And then sit back down. Once you've done 5. All right. Helen's giggling. Nick's ceiling's fallen down, but that's all.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I've got a fluorescent head, otherwise it's really bizarre.
That's all right. Now,
they'd never have known if you hadn't mentioned it, David.
it's all right. But before Helen realised that your ceiling had fallen down, Helen was giggling. All right, and that is the beauty of endorphins. Now I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But what are endorphins before we get onto the beauty of them? What are endorphins? Well, they're really simple. They're chemicals that are produced by your body. The body produces those to naturally relieve stress and pain. And they work very similarly to opioids, painkillers that you can get from the doctors, or after an operation, for example. But the opioids and endorphins, they produce feelings of euphoria, positivity, and they're involved in the natural reward circuits in your brain. And endorphins in particular relate to important activities that we do on a daily basis. For example, any physical activity we do, maybe eating, drinking. I'm going to say it, Nick. Sexual intercourse. Okay, all release endorphins.
Then.
Okay, but the beauty of endorphins and their release, as demonstrated by that little exercise I just did, you don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to run a marathon to have them release into your body. And something as simple as going up on your toes can release those endorphins. So it's something very, very simple. Just moving a little bit can release those endorphins and then increase how your brain is feeling, because it's then been swamped by endorphins, which in turn raise your positivity and raise how you're feeling, and feelings of euphoria on one hand, but also the minimum, absolute minimum, is you start feeling more positive about yourself and less anxious, and those any negative feelings you might have disappear. And one of my favorite sayings is action cures fear. Now that can apply in any range of things, but actually doing something gets rid of fear. So even if it's just moving, you're going to start abating any fear because of the natural chain reaction of chemicals in your brain. Now, how can we release endorphins? You know, you can do a bit of physical exercise like we've just done, or a simple act of laughing or smiling. Even if you don't really want to laugh or smile, if you fake it and smile, your body naturally releases endorphins. Now, Helen came on to me when I came on earlier and said, "You're like Tigger today." And I said, "Well, I'm just full of endorphins." And that's all it is. If you smile or laugh, even if you don't feel like it, and you force yourself to smile, you will release endorphins. And going back to Helen's story about what you see and what you expect to see, the saying, "Smile and the world smiles with you." Yeah. So if you smile, you start seeing smiles everywhere else. Other ways to release endorphins: eating, maybe your favorite food. Dark chocolate's a favorite one. Dark chocolate has been scientifically proven to release endorphins and make you feel more positive. So there you go. From a nutrition coach, happy days. I love that. Or also scientifically proven to release endorphins, eating something spicy. Your body reacts to spicy food and releases endorphins. So there we go. Little section on the positivity and the positive effects of endorphins on your brain and how to release them. So that's it from us this week. Next week, we're going to do a sort of sum up session, looking at all the topics we covered so far, and we're going to look at some key points, some key takeaways from each of those sessions, and hopefully that will be a really powerful webinar to join in. So hopefully see you next week, and have a great week. Stay positive.
Bye.